Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I'm Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No Darkness,
Darkness,
but ours.
but ours. The 1973 folk horror film Penda, written by David Rudkin, is an amazing, extraordinary work that really needs to be seen, or seen again if you've watched it before, revolving around a series of revelations and visionary or supernatural encounters that lead a teenage boy, Stephen Franklin, to question everything he's held as certain so far in his life. His sexuality, his religion, his right-wing politics, always a good idea to question those, and his very identity as a self-described son of England. In the final part of our conversation about this film, Gemma and I talk about the fundamental questions the film poses and how Stephen tries to answer them. One of the things that I really got when I watched it through, like I say, I've watched it through twice today. Once I intentionally to sort of prepare for this, and the second time because there was some time Kate and I we had some time to sort of kill before it was time to record the podcast. And I said, well, let's watch a movie. We tried to find something on Shudder and couldn't get into it, and thought, well, am I watching Penda's Fen again? You okay with that? Yeah, okay. And I was kind of like sharing the various insights I'd scribbled down earlier. She was like, oh, actually, I get that. Yeah, it's good.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But certainly the first time I was like scribbling a lot, and one of the things that sort of making notes as I went was I could actually, although I'd seen it before, it was kind of like seeing how stuff connected, because there's that whole description of the dream of Gerontius at the beginning, and you're kind of like, the fuck has this got to do with the price of tomatoes here? But of course, it's got, as I say, states the theme of the dream of Gerontius. What will happen? What is to happen to my soul? Which is the theme of this. But he also, there's a passage which struck because he's discussing Elgar from a very pious Christian, very authoritarian Christian point of view. But what he describes, what he yearns for, he says, to have heaven and hell between your ears. To write them down in notes, to walk those hills, to see the angel and the demon, to hear the dissonance that is the glance of God. And that's basically exactly what happens to him. He sees the angel, he sees the demon, he walks those hills, and he knows that he experiences that dissonance.
Yes. And to realize that the dissonance is the thing. It is the key thing. It is the thing that ties everything together. It's interesting. There's the transition of, okay, so at the beginning, he approves of his dad and disapproves of Arn because he believes that his dad would disapprove of Arn, which isn't true. Right from the beginning, you can see that his dad doesn't disapprove of Arn. His dad finds Arn, really funny and attractive and, and intellectually challenging, know. But he's sort of like, if I'm going to be the son of my father, then I cannot approve of Arn. And the interesting thing that happens when he finds out that he's adopted is that he can see how his father is different from the way that he thought that his father was or should be. And then that moves to him going, oh, so I could approve of Arn. I could be nice to Mrs. Arn. I could say, I hope that your next play is, God, it's not offensive. No.
Outrageous.
Outrageous. I hope that your next play is outrageous because a lot of your stuff has been outrageous. And I've only now realized, seems to be the subtext, that actually is not a terrible thing. That actually is a good thing.
I mean, there's two or three things in play, I think, in terms of Arn, because first of all, there's the relationship. There's how his relationship with his father shifts, and certainly after some of the revelations, and even before he realizes he's adopted, when he realizes how his father is actually more radical in his thought than he's ever realized, there is an honesty and an openness. And in terms, and one thing you notice as well in Spencer Banks's performance is as he goes on, he becomes happier and he becomes more. There's the scene when he's talking to Mrs. Arn, and he becomes very animated and he's smiling when he's talking about how being adopted. And this is the other thing, being adopted. I'm kind of sad that I don't know who my biological parents are, but at the same time I'm glad because, I know some of the stuff that has gone to make me who I am, but there's unknown factors. And those are possibilities, and he's got this really sweet, happy smile on his face, which had before. And you kind of this is so there is that, and there's also the fact that he's becoming, as he becomes more open-minded, he actually realizes he's actually sort of looking at Arn through different eyes, through less prejudiced eyes. And I think Arn is not exactly a mirror, but I think there's a lot in Arn that of the man that Stephen might, the kind of person that Stephen might become. That if we went back to Stephen 10, 20 years after this, we'd find him perhaps as somebody similar to Arn.
Similar to Arn, who is similar to Rudkin, and so he becomes like again, like a figure of inspiration, like a figure of, this is a way to live. And, the same way that, and like an alternate father in a strange way, an alternate father figure.
Something that his father says, because Stephen, as Stephen becomes aware of how radical his father's view of Jesus is, and he says the church crucifies him daily, and the church I crucify him. And he says, well, why are you still a priest? And he says, well, like everyone else, to survive in this world, I have to be two people, a self and a non-self. There's who you really are, and then there's like who you put on, what you put on in order to be able to, and that is, that is the fundamental thing for all of us. We have to, how do we stay true to who we really are and still survive and function and succeed for, if however you define, obviously how we define success might not be how the world defines success.
That's true. There's this other thing that's happening in the background that I only noticed this time around, with his mom. Obviously, when Stephen quits the army unit inside of school, I think he scales back on getting really good grades, or possibly he might be getting really bad grades suddenly. And
when she takes him to the factory.
Yeah, that's right. And his mom is like driving him past the factory and going, it's like, you can't do that because, you have to have the possibility of going to university. You have to have that, because otherwise you're going to end up on a.
She actually says to him, it doesn't matter how good your marks are, because he's based.
Yeah.
It was saying, you're in trouble at school. And because, of course, again, it's that sub-fascist ethos that again, and this is from kind of a generation before, the generation just before.
Okay, so it's just that he's suddenly receiving this backlash from the authority figures at school.
He won't get a reference, basically. So I think when he leaves the cadets, his form master or whatever he is sort of saying, my opinions carry a deal of weight.
Yes.
Those are the opinions that you'll encounter out there.
You are the only person that I cannot recommend for the sixth form club. And he's like, well, I guess if you feel that way about it, sir.
And there was definitely a bit of a fuck you in that sir, isn't there?
As opposed to the way that he's always said sir before,
which is
almost using it almost like a comma.
Yes.
I was dreaming, sir, of an angel, sir.
I'm trying to can I get my tongue any further up your arse, kind of thing, and not in the kind of fun way that he was.
Exactly. And she's saying, you have to be polite to these people. You have to not twit them to your face. You have to, at least go back to where you were before, where they weren't. It's like, wait a minute, he has contempt for us. That's not fun.
Yeah, it is that thing of you. It's one thing to know who you are and to be going at authority. It's another thing. You still have to survive in that world.
Yes.
You still have to. You can't just click your fingers and they all fall down.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think he kind of rejects it when his mom says that, when she's trying to frighten him by taking him to the factory and saying, you'll be chained to a conveyor belt for the rest of your life. But when his dad says you can have a self and a non-self, the self that you put on to get through the world, it's like, that's not so bad. That is to some degree adulthood.
Yeah.
Adulthood is where you realize that you don't have to set yourself on fire. You don't have to save the world. You don't have to,
Another scene I think is very telling is of course when he has the erotic dream about honey, but he also has that erotic dream about the whole rugby team all covered in mud and grappling in the middle of the gym.
Yeah.
And it's in the gym where you basically see them this time all in their cadets uniform, basically pinning him down, and when they in what looks like a scrum, but when they move back, they basically pinned him down and tied ribbons in his hair to make him look like a girl. Obviously, a reference to his sex, and they're all laughing at him. It's an attempt to humiliate, and
then he just sort of draws himself up and looks around and
just meets their gaze and is not saying them one by one. They thought even Honeybone. You're not sure Honeybone's going to. He's still got that smirk on his face, and then even that slowly fades. So there's a kind of it's interesting spotting those recurrences. The group of boys in the gym setting and how at first it's this and then it's that. And it's one of these many wonderful little kind of touches that kind of flow through. I mean, another interesting thing, another thing. But there's a lot of stuff that's. I mean, you always have this. There's always this thing with this potential pitfall with anything folk horror-y. The idea of the village as this little enclosed community, the idea of roots and heritage of things that go back. These are often things that are kind of associated or yoked to very reactionary, very political
that the rituals are always reactionary. The rituals are always about, cutting out the person who can't get along with everybody else and getting rid of them.
Preserving the past, preserving that kind of. It's kind of like the fascism always has that kind of golden age mentality, and there's the whole blood and soil thing. But here they are subversive. They are anarchic concepts. They don't reinforce authority or existing power structures. They question them. They subvert them. They attack them. Again, that's I mean, heritage in Rudkin's terms is always something very something that he kind of wrestles with in a lot of his work, because there's that sort of. I mean, I think I've said this before, but he came from the background he grew up in is something that on the surface would look like the perfect cradle for turning someone into a teenage fascist. His mother is from an Ulster Protestant background, which although you obviously wouldn't paint the entire community with the same brush, is still often associated with right-wing politics and nationalism and British nationalism. And his father was a revivalist minister. So again, on the surface, you think, well, that's a perfect recipe for producing a little authoritarian bastard. But I mean, again, I don't know how much of a role his sexuality had in that. But of course, his parents were human beings and not just cardboard cutouts. So there's, I mean, although his father's religion condemned theatres and cinemas as abodes of sin, his mother would sneak him across town to take him to the pictures and watch Hitchcock films. So there was definitely lots of stuff going on, but a few of his plays deal with the Northern Irish element of his background, and what does that mean, and are we just doomed to we shouldn't be just doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past to play. So who is, what we have a, I think he says in one of his plays, his character says in one of his plays, as a, the Ulster Protestants, we do have a proud history. We've helped throw back tyranny on several occasions. So now we choose who we're going to be now. And can we wouldn't it be better if we could change, if we could embrace new challenges into changing world and go forward, and actually, rather than simply kind of embracing the same old tribal shit. Again, the character kind of basically gets pretty much outcast by his entire family for coming out with that lot. But again, it's there's this freedom and perversity, which is something that certainly runs through my stuff. And I always think of that as being like a big backbone part of what went into the making of someone like Ches Pargeter. In the Hexlinger books, because I mean, Ches's guiding light is basically, got a problem with that, well, fuck you. I think Ches would have responded very very strongly to the final refrain of "Killing in the Name" by Rage Against the Machine. You know?
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Yeah, absolutely. You know, or I mean, I always sort of in the back of my head hear, like, you know, why? Because fuck you, that's why.
Yeah, yeah, that is very much Chess's attitude.
Yeah. And there is something that is very self-defeating about that kind of perversity in some ways, because it causes you to push things away. But at the same time, it can also cause you to embrace things. And there's, you know, and there is this undercurrent of Protestantism that is an embrace of freedom, which you can see even in things like there's an amazing band called 13 Horsepower, whose singer comes from a background, I believe an Appalachian background. His grandfather was a Nazarene preacher. And if you look at the video for a song that he wrote called Black Soul Choir, in which the refrain goes, "Every man is wicked, son, every man's a liar, unashamed with a wicked tongue, singing in the Black Soul Choir." You can see him clog stepping in the background of this thing. It's this amazing kind of, you know, this beautiful freedom, even though clog stepping is the least free type of dancing ever. You know? It's like, okay, so you can dance, but the only thing that you can do is throw your knee this way and the other way, this way and the other way. And you can't move anything in your upper body at all. It's just, he's like, motherfucker, I'm gonna clog step like you've never seen it done before.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, I mean, Protestantism had that kind of anti-authoritarian impulse, and one, although Luther then obviously established his own authoritarian.
Which is always the way it goes. But you know, the same way that the you know, when you look at the Hussites, you know, it's like people became very afraid of them because they would come through and just kill everybody. But at the same time, you know, we're talking about an army made of peasants, not even vaguely, you know, buying into the idea that lords lead us because lords are put on their thrones by God. No.
Yeah, they're definitely not buying that shit.
Yeah, definitely not buying that shit at all. You know, it's like, in fact, we're going to beat your asses with flails because that's all we got.
And, I mean, I remember sort of recently, possibly it may have been sort of after, you know, I don't know if you're anything like me, then there is a tendency to, you know, I'll just go to this Wikipedia page to check out this one thing, and then follow this hyper. And then suddenly you've got like 15 hyperlinks, you know, open in different tabs, and you're diving down rabbit holes into historical to bits of history that you never knew about. But it was interesting. I think there was one bit was like list of peasant uprisings, and I had a look at them, and there was this whole list of them of all the, you know, every time the underdogs had kind of risen up against the kings, and you know how they'd done, and it was like, okay, a lot of the time they get beaten, but there are success stories where they manage to. I mean, look, it just another authority gets established, and of course, it being human, it's never perfect. And you know, then you'll need somebody.
I fight authority. Authority always wins.
Yes.
You know, but really, the way that authority wins is that you become the authority. You know, I mean, it's kind of good that young Zizka got the Black Plague when he did, because I'm sure he wouldn't have been super happy. What happened afterwards.
That quote, is it the Dark Knight? You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
It's true.
It's
but not that he would have seen it, because he lost both eyes by then. But
interesting. Let's go to, I mean, because given that etymology is a bit of a current theme in Penda, and I had a look. I mean, the meaning of the name of, I had a look at Stephen. I mean, the name Stephen means wreath or crown, which is Franklin. His surname means landowner of free but not noble origin. So that kind of I suspect there are very few accidents with David Rudkin when it comes to the names he gives.
Yeah,
he gives people.
I'm absolutely sure that you're right about that.
Yeah.
You know,
He's
he's a man who knows his symbols.
Yes, he sure does.
Yeah.
I mean, it is one of those films which it does bear rewatching, and you'll probably get more from it each time you do. It's from a very slightly different, because I don't think Rudkin has an interest in the occult the way that Richard Stanley does, but Stanley's Dust Devil is another one that's absolutely stuffed full. There's so much going on in that. You probably need to watch it a few times to kind of register all the things.
I haven't watched it for a while, but it's always in the back of my mind. And
oh God, yeah.
I have, you know, the two versions of it as well. So I should go back and look at the differences between those two edits.
I wish there was more. I mean, the other, in terms of other work by Rudkin that's worth. I mean, I'd love to see more of his more of his stage plays performed, but his stage plays are often, you know, quite demanding in terms of staging, and often, because of the subject matter, they're not exactly the kind of thing where people go, oh yeah, this is really gonna, oh, the Triumph of Death, that's really gonna pack the seats on a Saturday night. But
yes, yeah, it's a bit like oh my God, come on, no, his name's gone right out. Shaw. It's a bit like Shaw, you know, where you're sort of like, were these made to be performed, or were they made to be read?
Allowed by Shaw to a captive audience.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I remember reading Back to Methuselah back in my teens, and it's like, you know, once you wade through this huge amount of all these bombastic introductory self-congratulatory notes,
yes.
And then you go through the actual plays, and I don't know if when was the last time anyone staged this stuff.
Well, up here we have two festivals every year. One's Stratford and the other one's Shaw, and at least half of the stuff performed at the Shaw Festival is Shaw. Usually.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I suppose he wrote quite a few plays, and not all of them were. I mean, I think by the time he got onto stuff like Back to Methuselah, he was getting into a more heavily didactic stuff that was starting to bore the shit out of some of the critics. I mean, I think the actor Sebastian Shaw, last seen as the best known possibly as the face of Darth Vader when he takes his mask off in Return of the Jedi.
Oh God, yes.
Had actually worked with George Bernard Shaw, and he said, as far as my namesake was occurred, the world had only known two truly great playwrights, Shakespeare and Shaw, and he did not put them in that order. So Shaw did have something of an ego, which I think we knew. I mean, Rudkin really. Let's see. There's some other TV. I mean, he wrote a number of TV plays in the 60s and 70s, but a lot of them, if they're out there anywhere, I don't know where to find them. There are a couple. There is The Living Grave, which is out there on YouTube. Which actually also stars Ian Hogg. There's a short film called White Lady, which he actually directed, and there is, of course, Artemis 81, which I think is another one that's worthy of a deep dive. Itself.
Yeah, it really is, because again, it's like so many things crammed into this particular.
Although it's a considerably longer film, so there's maybe a little less constriction. Although I notice again, there is actually some kind of underground base in that where sort of unethical scientific shenanigans are being performed on people. So there's an echo of these kind of like science fictional elements in quite a bit of Rudkin stuff as a kind of commentary on what does your government do in your name? How does it maintain its authority, and by what nefarious means does it do so? So I think we definitely need to devote a future podcast to that one. So for anyone who's still with us at this point, basically, if you haven't seen Penda Sven, then for goodness sake, go and watch it. And
Yeah.
if you have already seen it, go and watch it again, because you'll almost certainly find something there that you hadn't seen the last time you checked it out.
Absolutely. You may find 10 things. They may leap out at you in ways that you just didn't see before. And definitely, if you're interested in folk horror at all, then try to pick up the Severin collection, at least bits of it, because man, there's some incredible stuff in that.
Well, I'll have to hunt that one down. As I said, I've got the Blu-ray of Penda Sven that the BFI put out, but
yeah.
This is how people end up owning multiple copies of the same film, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how I ended up owning 2 copies of Robin Redbreast, one of which is the BFI copy.
I've got that one as well, and that's another one I need to have to crack open and have a look at. There is, I mean, we're not in danger of running out of material for the podcast anytime soon. I don't think. He said, touch wood. Tempted fate with that one. It's only likely to. I think we're in more danger of running out of time in which to do justice to it all.
Yes, exactly. So many good things and so many bad things, so many amazing things. So many shit-amazing things in the world.
Yeah, there is stuff that really shouldn't stay with us, but I mean, there's a whole feature on Lucio Fulci films to be done there, I think.
I mean, I know for a fact that my brain operates like a garburator and also like a mulch heap. So, I will chew through a lot of crap to find one interesting, tasty bit of gristle that I can then, stick in the mulch heap to grow a superating pearl around itself.
Well, as I think I said, the number of schlocky horror movies I watched while slightly high, and would basically have either found levels of profundity that were just not there, or imagined the story going off in directions that it didn't. But the great thing was, of course, when I'd sobered up in the morning, as long as I could still remember the ideas I'd had, realizing that no, that was not the film you saw. That story did not.
No, that was a whole nother film that was playing in your brain at the same time.
So now you can go and write the story that you thought it should have been. So there's a lot to be said for that. So that is Penda Sven. If you haven't seen it, see it. If you have, see it again.
See it again, and show it to somebody else. Show it to somebody else while you do.
Yes, spread the word, and they will either they will either love you, or they will run away screaming, thinking, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" one or the other. There's not much.
Simon, sometimes you can be so grotesque.
You didn't do the eye roll. You need to get the eye. You need to work on the eye. Come on, you've got a teenage son. You should have perfected the eye roll by now.
That's true.
Okay, so we will be back next week with more cool stuff like this.
Yep.
Hopefully. And until then, I have been Simon Bestwick.
And I remain Gemma Files.
And
this of course, was
No Darkness.
But Ours.
Yes.
Penda Sven.